the introduction. I'm glad to be here to be speaking to all of you. I just started at the Forage Cattle Research and Education Center back in June. So I've only been on the job about 8 months, but it's been nothing but fun and getting to know people like yourselves. So I'm really looking forward to see what the next few years hold. So today, this whole theme of today's program is capitalizing on the market. And we do that by trying to maximize profit. So that's what I'm going to talk about today, is how we can use management on our operations to maximize profits. Maybe. There we go. Okay. So because we're talking about capitalizing on the market, I wanted to preface this presentation with talking about the market and what's currently going on in it. So we're seeing our lowest inventory in 60 years. It was this low back in 2014 and 2015. I'm sure most of you remember that. But before that, it was 6 years ago that it was this low. Heifer retention in the building is expected to be lower than it was in 2014 and 2015. And so what that means, we're just going to rebuild that herd a lot slower because of high input costs that we've had to deal with, higher interest rates, limited forage because of prolonged drought throughout the country, things such as that. And also another indicator is the number of heifers in our feedlots. With that number being so high, that means we're not keeping heifers in our herd to rebuild, so that's also an indicator that expansion, if it has started, it's been very slow. And another indicator that I have on here is female slaughter. So that's the amount of female cattle going to slaughter from these feedlots, and that is over half of all cattle being slaughtered. And then breaking that down into beef cow slaughter can also be referred to as the culling rate across the nation, and that right now is at 12.7%. And during the last expansion, it was at 8%. So you can see we're not in that rate of expansion just yet. But I talk about all that to say all of that affects cattle prices. And so right now, as all of you I'm sure are aware of, cattle prices are pretty high right now, and they're expected to continue rising, with expansion being, having not started yet and being pretty slow. So from that, this is just a graph. I hope y'all can see that. But the blue is just the inventory levels. Oh, I'm going to use this fancy thing that Bridget gave me. Okay. So the blue is the inventory levels, and so you can see as inventory gets lower, prices trend higher. So just kind of wanted to give a visual there. And then this is just visuals of everything I talked about. The female slaughter, you can see this, there we go. This blue line is 2023, and then these are the other years of our last expansion, so you can see we're not in that realm yet. And then this is the percentage of heifers on feed, currently at 40%. During the last expansion, they were about 32%. And then this is just steer prices for 450 to 5-weight cattle. So you can see this line here is the 6-year average. You can see we're pretty low, and you can see that trend there. But then the gray lines and yellow lines are 2014 and 2015, and then this orange line is 2023. So you can see that we're following that historic trend of low inventory and high prices. So, and then, but with high prices, we've also seen the highest input costs in a very long time, since 1996 from the data that I have. So some people may be making a profit, some people may still be breaking even with these input costs as high as they've been. Input costs are expected to decrease, and they've already kind of been decreasing a little bit, so hopefully that trend will continue. And then this is cow-calf returns after those input costs are taken out. So we're still here with this data showing across the nation that we're not in the red, and we're expected to increase as cattle prices stay high and input costs are supposed to trend down. But that all brings me to the question of what are we going to do when cattle prices start dropping and we're not in the scenario that we are now? How can we maximize profits even when our revenue is decreasing from what it is now? So again, how can we maximize profit? Something's got to give. We either got to increase revenue or we've got to decrease cost. But why can't we do both? With intentional, effective management. And so that's what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to talk about a few strategies that you could consider implementing on your operation. But before I do that, I kind of want to break down the definitions of these words we're using today, because they can be used interchangeably, but I kind of want to highlight what each one means in my presentation. So maximize as you all know, is make as great as possible. We want as much money as we can get so that we can make a living. Capitalize takes the chance to gain advantage from. And notice there's not a timeline on that definition. So we have to learn how to take advantage of the market no matter what time frame we're in, no matter what the market is doing. So that's where our management strategies come in to play, and then optimizing, making the best of and most effective, efficient use of within limitations. And I have that underlined because everybody here has limits on their operations. We don't all have the same limits, but everybody has limits. So there may be management practices that are recommended today that you feasibly can't implement, but there may be some that you can. So you just have to explore year by year what your operation can handle and how your management styles can match your long-term goals. Okay, so I want everybody here to just kind of ask themselves, how can we maximize profits by capitalizing on the market through optimization strategies on our operations? So the 4 strategies I'm going to go through today are vaccination protocols and value-added programs, which we kind of heard a little bit about from our superior rep, and then a controlled breeding season, and then bull calves versus steer calves. There are obviously other management strategies that can be implemented, but these are the ones I kind of wanted to highlight today. Okay, so first, I hate the duds. I hope y'all can see that somewhat, but the first thing I'm going to talk about is vaccination protocols and value-added programs. I have the word programs in quotes because there are specific value-added programs that you can market your cattle with, but you can also have your own value-added program by adding value to your cattle through the things that you do. So this first graph I have on here, I just want to highlight the drug cost and body weight, and then end price. And this is a study that was done in Oklahoma about the economic and production effects of bovine respiratory disease on heifers during the backbiting phase before they went to the feedlots. And so you can see here this untreated cattle once, twice, 3 times, and then chronically ill. And you can see the more times that those cattle had to be treated, it was more expensive to treat them. Their body weight, because they didn't recover, and even if they got well, they're still going to suffer in that end weight. And so these end prices show that by showing those sick cattle sold for less. And then if you retain ownership of cattle all the way throughout the feedlot, this is especially important for you, but what if you don't? What if you just put them on the truck after they're weaned? Why should you care what goes on in the feedlots? And so I'm going to get to that in this slide after this one. This is just another one showing preconditioned cattle. Percent sick is lower, percent dead lower, percent outs lower. So preconditioned cattle do better in the feedlots because one of my advisors from Oklahoma State put it like this. She said it's just like children. If you send them off to daycare, they're being exposed to germs that are not in your household. So it's the same with cats. They're being stripped from their moms, hauled to a feedlot, they're stressed, so they're more susceptible to diseases. But we can try to prevent that from by giving them vaccinations. And so I say all that to say, why do you care if feeders can save money? Well, because if you put in the work to save feeders money, it potentially makes you more money. So I have these graphs on here showing these different programs that you can do. And these are superior programs, but like I said, this is just showing, I have these numbers on here to show the tendencies of buyers, what buyers are looking for at these sale barns. If you put in the work and show them that you put in the work, it saves them work and money in the long run, and so they're willing to pay a premium for those cattle. So just for example, even like non-weaned cattle, just given one vaccination, sold for a little, like 148, and then you go up from the more you put in, or the more you're able to do, you get paid for your efforts. And so this too, I want to highlight this, the VAC 34. That is a vaccination protocol that Superior offers, but you don't have to wean. And I know a lot of small farms in Florida may not have the capacity to wean, or don't have the means to build pens to wean, or don't even have the area to hold weaned calves. So even if you just vaccinate, show these feeders that my cattle are lower on the spectrum of getting sick than these other cattle, and they will, they're willing to pay for that. But then, of course, if you are able to wean, that's even better because those cattle are less stressed and they're going to those feedlots, and the longer you wean, the better. So then I just have these little cheesy quotes on here. Spend money to make money. You may just have to make some investments, make some changes to see that long-run return, and then you get out of it what you're able to put into it. So then we're going to move on to the next one. I know some of you, if not all of you, have heard about implementing a controlled breeding season. we preach that pretty hard in extension. And the reason is because you have a uniform calf crop that hopefully weighs more at weaning and they're healthier. And we say they weigh more because if they're born earlier in your calving season, they have more time to put weight on at weaning before you sell them. And so these are just reasons why you can shorten your breeding season. It creates more time for the calves to put on weight, reduces time checking for calves year-round. You don't have to constantly have your eye on your herd of, are they going to drop a calf today, or are they going to drop a calf tomorrow? You don't have to spend time getting them up and processing them multiple times. But this big one here, it's not just about the calves. It allows you to cull less productive cows. So we want a cow to have a calf every year, right? Every 365 days. If you have a year-round calving season, you don't necessarily know that you're tracking that well. You could have cows in your herd that are having a calf every 390 days. And so that adds up year after year, and you're putting money into a cow that's not productive, that you could be putting that money into an entire herd of productive cows. And then the last one, potentially increased revenue when selling a more uniform lot. And so that's what this next slide is about. So this is a very simple scenario that I put together. So we're just going to kind of walk through it. So let's say you have a herd of 100 cows and you have a calving rate of 90%. So that's 90 calves that you're going to sell at weaning. You sell them all the first week of October. And I put that on there just to show this is what prices were in October 2023. So let's say you just got calves all over the place, and for simple math purposes, I distributed them uniformly across these weight groups. So let's say you got calves in each of these weight groups. So they're all selling for different prices per 100 weight. But then compared to a more uniform lot, you've got heavier calves you've got them in 3 different categories rather than spread across 6. And so what that does is increases your revenue. Now for this scenario, revenue increased to 110%. I'm not saying that everybody's operation is going to increase to 110%, but I'm also not saying it's impossible. I mean, you never know unless you implement this management practice. And it's also showed that feeders will pay more for a uniform lot because they're trying to fill those lots that they're hauling to the feedlot. And so if they're having to nitpick and pick from different lots to try and fill a 50,000 pound load, they would much rather go ahead and just buy it all in one. So, so that's what this is about, and that's the whole reason we preach controlled breeding season. It's for your benefit. Okay, and then the last thing I'm going to talk about is steer calves versus bull calves and why we recommend you cut calves, ban calves, or whatever. So during the 6-year average of 2017 to 2023, the average discount for bull calves was $7.52 per hundredweight, or $35.72 per head. Now that adds up. It's $30, but that adds up if you have a whole herd of bull calves compared if you had a whole herd of steer calves. Now let's look at 2023 prices, because since we're expecting prices to increase or stay high like they are right now, let's just look and see what the discount was in 2023. It was $13.50 per hundredweight, or $64 a head. Again, that adds up if you have a whole herd of bull calves rather than a whole herd of steer calves. And so on average, steer prices have been higher than bull prices by about 5%. And then on average, steer prices were consistently higher in 2023 by 6%. So historical data shows us that steer calves go for more than bull calves. But you might be thinking, well, this is the same weight. This is 500-pound steers compared to 500-pound bulls. What if your bulls way heavier at weaning? We're going to talk about that. You got to consider the price slide. So we know that when we have heavier cattle, they enter that lower. There's a price slide, and you get a lower dollar per hundredweight or dollar per pound for those cattle. So you got to consider that if you're selling heavier weight cattle. So I drew up a scenario here too. You got to ask yourself the question: is what does my bull have to weigh to make up for that $60 discount that I'm getting because he's not a steer? So just walking through it again, we're going to put up here a value of 475-pound bull with an initial price of $227 per hundredweight. So let's say your bull weighs 50 pounds more at 525 pounds. What is the value of each additional pound that that bull put on? And then how many pounds does he actually need to make up for the discount? So let's say there's a $10 price slide. If your 475-pound bull sells for $1,000, or $1,082, but your heavier bull is a little over $1,100, each additional pound, so each of those 50 pounds, is worth $1.75. So right there, you're already not getting the the same dollar per pound, if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. Yeah, so it's already cheaper. So for him to make up that $64 discount per head, he needs to weigh 37 pounds more than his steer. That's in the same, he needs to weigh more than a steer that weighs 475 pounds. So if he does, he weighs 50 pounds. So if we have a $10 price slide, he's good. What if we have a $15 price slide? Same thing. His value for each additional pound is $1.49. Right there, you're still lower. So he would need to weigh 43 pounds more than the steer at that same weight. Now he does, he weighs 50 pounds, but he's pushing it. Now what if we have a $20 price slide? That is kind of what we're seeing today, because as prices increase, your price slide typically increases. So right now, for the price slide between this category of 450 to 495 pound steers, and then just that next one is 500 to 545, that price slide right now, the last time I looked at it last week, was right at $20. And if we're expecting prices to increase, we can only expect that price slide is going to increase. But let's just look at the $20 price slide. So using that same walkthrough scenario, the value of each additional pound there is $1.23. So you can see as your price slide goes up, the value of each additional pound goes down. And so this bull would have to weigh 50 pounds more than that same weight steer. And he does, fairly. He's short 2 pounds. So in that scenario, you're good. But let's say, if the price slide goes up $25, $30, then this bull is short. He's still not bringing as much as that steer. So let's just walk through another scenario of a lighter weight bull. Let's say your bull only weighs 25 pounds more at $500 pounds. So the same thing, but this bull's short. Even with a $10 price slide, he needs to weigh 36 pounds more than the steer. He only weighs 25. $15 price slide, he needs to weigh 42, and at a $20 price slide, he needs to weigh 50 more. So the whole point here is steer calves historically bring more than bull calves. So if it's possible in your operation, it's definitely recommended to cut those calves and make up for that discount. And then just 2 more points. If you know the discount and you're not able to cut calves and you have to sell bull calves, if you know the discount and you know the price slide, you need to know how many pounds your bulls need to weigh to outbid those steers, not outbid, but match the same price as those steers. And then implants, if you're able to do implants, that is a fairly cheap way to get that bull weight without getting the bull discount. So that's also recommended if your operation is able to do that. And so why do we care in Florida? Like I said, you put them on the truck, they go to the feedlot, and they're not your problem anymore unless you retain ownership. But we care because the market is good now, like I've talked about. But how are we going to take advantage of price premiums when that market drops? How are we still going to continue to make all the money that we can to make a living when the market is not in our favor? And then just another point, now is the time to make these changes when prices are good and you maybe have a little extra revenue and a little extra profit to see if these investments are worth it on your operation. So then just on take-home points, I always like to end with a take-home point if you hear nothing else. I wanted to separate the definitions of goal of selling, which is just selling something to get money in return, and then the goal of marketing. So I just pulled a couple definitions and quotes from several different dictionaries and sites. And so the first one is to convince a person, so that person in our case is the feeders, that your product, your calves, are worth investing in. Establish a brand loyalty and increase overall sales. If your name is out there and your cattle have a reputation of not getting sick in the feedlot and they're worth paying for, it gets out there and you build a brand for your operation. The next one is marketing is the force behind getting products to market and keeping them there. So the force behind getting products to market and keeping them there. So if we don't adapt to how the market is changing and how management strategies are changing, it's not impossible for your operation to continue struggling so much that you may have to sit out one day. And I would hate for that, to see that happen, and I know you would too. So it's important to make these investment changes and invest in our cattle so that we can continue receiving a profit. And the last one I really like is understanding our buyers' challenges and positioning our product as a solution to their problem. If you have a feeder coming to a sell barn, he's thinking, oh, I'm behind our cattle that are getting sick in these feedlots, my boss is getting pretty upset at me. Meet that need. Have your cattle vaccinated, have them cut, have them in the best shape possible so that these feeders will pay more for your product. So And the last thing I'll say is just intentional management. We all want to make a profit and we all want to do well and stay in the cattle business. I want to see that for everybody in this room. But if our management styles don't match our goals, it's not going to happen. So if you have big goals, make those little changes that have big impacts. And so that's all I'll say, and I hope it was clear. If you have any questions, please come find me. I'll be here all day. Thank you.